Okay, so I think we're recording now. All right, so we are up to, in general, people should have the Gemaras with them for the Shuir, obviously, ideally, so we can, because we're going to be really going through the Gemaras inside and talking about as we go along. So the Gemara in Peyam and Beis, we're starting off this week in the Shuir. This is really last week's material, but we're going to try to cover a couple weeks' material. This partially cover it now. So the Gemara says, Amar Yehuda Amar Rav, Lo Shanu Ela B'Ksherim. This halacha that the Mishnah says that Isha Achas could have Yichud with Shnei Anashim, with two men, that's only talking about if the men are Ksherim. Ava B'Prutzim, if someone is in the getter of Parutz, which it's not so clear exactly what is that getter of Parutz, well, we'll just say right now he's Chashud on Arias. Someone's Parutz to Arias. Afilu Be'asora Namilo, even 10 men you can't be misachah with because you can't trust them, because the Maisa is that like 10 men took one woman outside the cheskes that she's like dead, but they're just having an affair with her. And Rashi adds over there, Rashi says that it was Anashim Amita B'Cheskes She Mesa Kilkul Ima. They brought her outside pretending she's dead, and then they had a kilkul with her. The Eish is Ish Haisa. She was an Eish Ish. Which the question is, what does Rashi know that from? We don't see anything alluding to that in the Sugya, except for the fact that we're the main halacha of Yichud over here is really the Eish Ish and the Mishnah, and we're trying to find a tear where an Eish Ish is muteris. So I guess Rashi just assumes if we brought this Maisa, then it's Kimlan, that the Chazal that knew that it was talking about an Eish Ish. So the halachas of Yichud primarily, for the most part, the other arayas apply as well, but for the most part, the most common issue of Yichud is going to be, at least in the Chazal, is going to be Eish Ish. I think that's probably the case in Chazal, because in those days, often, at least in the time of Chazal, a lot of Penuyos, because of Taharas, went to the mikvah. But today, all the Penuyos, all the single women are nidos. They have an Issachar to them. So then there's equally an issue of Yichud Midaraisa with Penuyos, with non-married women as well, with single women, because they're nidos. So it's the same issue as an Eish Ish. Just Chazal usually speaking about Eish Ish in their time, because a lot of Penuyos, either they ate Taharas or they want to be Taharas, not to be Matama Taharas. But the same, it applies equally today to all the single girls, that they're all benitos. So the Gemara goes on to say that we bring a riot to this halacha that most lo shnei tamid chachamim shama yavo le'avaderech. They have to send someone as accused to be a sota. They have to send the husband with two tamid chachamim. So it says tamid chachamim in anshi da amalo. You see from here that can only be tamid chachamim that are ksherim, that even above ksherim, that they're even a higher level of ksherim than regular people, but regular people not. So we see that we wouldn't trust regular people. Lo shiny tamid chachamim diyodi la suryabe. The reason we need tamid chachamim is because they know how to warn, they know how to give hasra, to give the proper warning for the husband not to have bia with his wife, in order not to calculate the din of sota, that like Rashi says, that if they would have relations, then and she would drink the water. Rashi says at the end, nimtza shem shemayim nimchach lebatala, that will cause an unnecessary erasing of Hashem's name with this water, which is not going to do its trick anyway. So you're unnecessarily doing mechikas Hashem. I think just once Rashi mentions that, we'll just digress for a minute. Just ask a quick question, that in the Parsha of Sota, that we are, the Gemara says that it's better to come and be mochik the Shem Shemayim in order to be matzah Isha L'Baila. For the sake of Shalom Bais, then that's a heter of the Torah, to be mochik the Shem Hashem. So the Maral Prague asks, and like more in Sota, that Sokol Sof, what do you do with mechikas Hashem? That's one of the most chamor possible averas, to be mochik the Shem Hashem. So how for the sake of Shalom Bais, how is it possible to have a heter of mechikas Hashem? What does the Torah mean by that? So the Maral answers that, and this is a whole rikus on its own point, but I'll just touch on one point. The Maral says that The name Shalom, there says that through this Mechikas Shem you bring Shalom, Bein Ish to Ishto. So the Maral says that Shalom is one of the names of Kadosh Baruch Hu, actually. But he explains that name of Shalom is not one of the names that's usher to erase. If the name Shalom is written on a piece of paper, there's no issue of erasing it. There are certain poskim that are machmer. Rabbi Yashiv was machmer to on all its stationery. It just said Shin Lamed Vav, and whatever they call it in its Hebrew, chupchik, whatever the little apostrophe, not to have the name written out completely, or if the letter got thrown away. But that's a chumrah Rabbi Yashiv had. But the name Shalom can be erased on paper. So if the name of Shem, how can you erase it? So the Maral explains that it's only a name of Hashem between two Jews. When two Jews say Shalom to each other, then there's a name, the Shem Shemayim of Hashem is chal between the two of them, and that's where it's a Shem Hashem. So the Maral says that the way to bring Shalom to Ishto is this parsha. So he says that, true, you wouldn't be allowed to erase Hashem's name, but here you're not erasing Hashem's name. This is the way to write Hashem's name. You're just writing a different name, the name of Shalom. That's why Ramesh Shapir used to be upset when people said hello to each other and not Shalom, because you're giving up an opportunity to say Shalom or Shalom Aleichem instead of hello or good morning. Used to be very upset about that, because the way Jews greet each other is with the word Shalom. That brings the Shem Shemayim between us. Okay, that's just a minor Muskar digression. So the Gemara goes on in Pei Aleph and Mid Aleph, and this will take us into the sugya that we have a mice over here that Rav and Rabbi Yehuda that were walking along the way, and suddenly there's a woman that was walking before them. So Rav says to Rabbi Yehuda, Dal karecha mikame gehenim. Let's run and get out of here, because we might have an Shuir Yichud. You said by ksherim it's okay, and we're two men, so what's the problem? Why should it be a problem of yichud? Why do we have to run out of here so quickly? What gehenim is there? So he says, when I said ksherim is okay, who said like me and you? So who could it be like? Gemara in Sanhedrin, that Chanina bar Papi and his colleagues, they're considered unusual tzaddikim. So when I say ksherim, I meant those type of unusual tzaddikim. So the Rishonim all ask that how could Rav say such a thing? First of all, think who Rav was. Rav was the Gadol Hador. Rabbi Yehuda, his Talmud, was one of the Gadol Hador in the next generation. Rav was the Gadol Hador in the generation after Rabbeinu HaKadosh. So if not him, then who? So okay, who can say on themselves that they were like Rav Chanina bar Papi v'Chaverav? And also the mashmos of the Gemara before, the first Gemara said, Amar Yehuda Amar Rav lo shanu ela b'ksherim al b'prutzim afilu be'asara namilo. So the only thing that we came to exclude was prutzim, someone that's really a begetter paritz, begetter that they're chashed on arayas. So there's a huge abyss between prutzim and Rav Chanina bar Papi v'Chaverav. So if you meant to say to begin with that it has to be those kind of tzaddikim, why would you just say lafuke prutzim? So the Rishonim, the Ran and many Rishonim, the Ramban actually, and the Ramban at the end of the Masechta, and the Ran and the Ritva all say that Rav over here in this Maisa didn't mean halacha l'maisa. He just meant a chumrah that he was been machmer for himself. Like they sneeze haisabe. The words of the Ritva are Perish Sneus nog ba'atzmo. He had an extra level of sneus that he was noeg with himself. Dila min adin, because halachically, stam kol ado keksherim le'inyan zeh ad she'muchsach b'parutz. A stam regular person, until he has a cheskas parutz, he's muchsach himself by through doing maisim royim. He made a chazaka on himself that is considered a parutz, that is kosher for this din. But kol sheken inu the chachim of sakidi, all the more so, those tzaddikim, Rav and Rabbi Yehuda, they were for sure Hasidim and tzaddikim. Mishu and V'Nesusa, who Damar Hachi was that Pashat. It's Pashat that it was only an extra level of a nibus. So that's what Rav Rishon would say. That's the Ritva says, the Ran says, the Ramban says. However, the Rambam, the Ran asks this kasha, that the Rambam says, Perek HaPeis Yisrei Bia Halacha Ches. Perek HaPeis of Yisrei Bia, that is the Perek of Yichud. So the Rambam says, Lo Tisached Isha Achas Afilim Menashim Harbe At Shetia Sham Ishto Shel Echa Behem. So Rambam Paskins Lahedya, and this is also the psak of the Shulchan Aruch, in fact, that that a woman can't have Yichud even with a number of men. So how can he say that if we paskin that 2 men is with her? So the Ran wants to say, and also the Magid Mishnah says here on the place, that the Rambam is paskin like the Maisa of Rav and Rabbi Yehuda. And until you have somebody that's like Rechinin Rav Papi V'Chaverav, then they're not considered ksherim. So although we used the lashon earlier that you need prutzim, so we have a kasha from that lashon, but the Maisa of the Rambam they say is paskening like that daya, which would then say that the psak of the Shulchan Aruch is like which quotes the lashon of the Rambam, that becomes a problem. Now the Maisa of the Mishnah Melech in Hilchos Sota, he brings proofs to say that the Rambam himself only didn't mean it maker a din. He only meant it l'shem it's a roy to be knowing that way from this Maisa of Rav and Rabbi Yehuda. But maker a din, the Rambam himself paskin that the Shnei Nashim is mutter. Haraya, the Rambam afterwards paskins the halacha. We didn't get there yet, but there's a halacha that if you have a type of a house that you have an inner chamber, like an inner room, and then you have the outer rooms. And the Gemara says later on that if you have women, men are on the inside and women are outside, that's a problem, because the men will go out, they can have yichud with the women. So they can't live there that way. But if women live in the middle and the inside, and they have to get through the men's section to get outside, that's okay, because they're always going to have at least 2 men there. Since a bunch of men live there, they're always going to be at least 2 men. And it's what to be misaka with 2 men. So if the Rambam paskin that it's this Isra of Yichud with Kama Anashim is Mikra Din, how can he paskin that other halacha that the women are allowed to live in the inside room and go through the men because there'll always be 2 men. What does 2 men help you? He says it's usher even Menashim Harbe. So Mishnah Melech proves from there that even the Rambam that paskins this is only paskin it as a tznius. It's like a mildly asera, a chumrah, but not Mikra Din. But Mikra Din, 2 men is enough, which is a little bit strange that the Rambam doesn't even mention that halacha of 2 men. So the Mishnah Melech is a little bit strange. And I think that the Ramah, we see clearly from the Ramah, he holds not like the Mishnah Melech, because the Ramah on this halacha, it's in the Ibn Ezra Simon Chaf Beis, Sif Hey. It's interesting that it's just a good memory method to remember this, that it's Chaf Beis, it's chapter 22 in the Rambam in Yisrei Bia, and it's Chaf Beis in Shulchan Aruch and Ibn Ezra as well. Same, so it's a good way to remember where Hilchos Yichud is. So there, the Shulchan Aruch, like we said, he says, "Lo tishached isha achas afilu menashim harbe, atzatia ishto shel echa mehim imo." So he paskins like the lashon of the Rambam that it's usher even with kama and nashim unless one of the wives are there. The Ramah says, "V'yesh omrim di isha achas misacheres im shnei nashim sherim im hu be'ir." Some say that you could have yichud 1 woman with 2 men as long as they're in the city. The stam nashim ksherim him, and for that halacha of 2 men, stam nashim are ksherim. So the Ramah that it says a lesson of yesh omrim. So the Ramah didn't come to explain the Rambam because he wouldn't say yesh omrim. He would just say v'hu, whatever. He would say a different lesson. When the Ramah says yesh omrim, it's a lesson to be cholik on the Shulchan Aruch, not to explain the Shulchan Aruch. So the Ramah clearly understood the Shulchan Aruch which is the lashon of the Rambam, to say that it is halacha. It's not just a chumrah. And then he comes along to say that no, but some say that, and that's the psak of the Ramah, that it is mutter to have one woman with two men, and stam men are ksherim. Lafuke the Rambam that holds stam men are not ksherim, because he needs to have tzaddikim like Rachanina Bar Papi. And the Gra points that out as well on the spot on the Ramah, that the Gra he brings the rayas that the other Rishon bring against the Rambam, and one of them is the fact that the Gemara before, like we mentioned, says only prutzim is asur if it's even 10 men. That for that you need a cheskas prutzim, but regular men are all considered kosher. So we see that's the psak halacha. Like the Ramah. Okay, going to the next point, the Gemara goes on to say, there are a couple of points in the middle we're not going to go into, but the Gemara goes on halacha to say, Amar Rabba, Baila be'ir, we have a few halachas here. Baila be'ir ein choshim mishum yichud. Right, if her husband's in town, then there's no problem to have yichud with the wife. We'll have to see how that applies or what that means. Amar Rav Yosef, Pesach Pesuach L'Shus Rabim ein choshim mishum yichud. Rav Yosef says a second halacha that if you're in a makam sogur, in a closed place like Rishus Yochid, a house, but there's an open door to the Rishus Rabim, also not Choshesh Mishum Yichud. And then we have a Maisa, Rabibi, Ikla the Be'er Rav Yosef. Rabibi went to the house of Yosef, Basar de Karach Rifta. He was up in the attic, and I guess she was up there with him or something, and he said, on the contrary, she was below and he was up on top. Shkolo Darged Matute Bibi. He said, take the ladder away that I can't get down there. Because he was concerned with Yichud with the wife of Rabibi, the wife of Rav Yosef. If her husband's in town, there's no problem. Rav Yosef was in town. So that's different because Rashi says Sheshvinti means that they were close, they were friendly. So Rashi, Bala's brislo. She's a Bala's bris, meaning she's like she has understandings with him. They're friendly. They're good friends. So even though the husband is in town, so Rabibi is Megala that there's a Tanai in these halachas of let's say Bala Be'ir. In that halacha, at least, there's a Tanai that Bala Be'ir helps when you're in a real matzah of yichud. It helps only if you have no shaychus with the woman or no real kesher. But if you're at the level of libo gasba, like the poskim all say, your heart is considered gasba. You're chummy with her. Gaspa means like you're chummy. So then Bala Be'ir doesn't help. So we'll have to see why that's so. So going back to the Ikra Shaila of the Gemara, that Bala Be'ir, we say that we're not worried about Yichud, so we have a major machlokas Rashi and Tos over here. Rashi says that Lein Choshim Mishum Yichud means you don't get malchus for it. It's only a tour from malchus, mashma that it still remains usher. Just it means if you did it, then you don't get malchus for it. So Tosus is bothered by that. Tosus says that if it's only for malchus, but it's not really a heter to have yichud, so then why do Rabibi have to come on to the fact that he has libo gaspa to not have yichud with her, to take the ladder away to not have yichud, even without libo gaspa? There's never a heter to begin with, so of course he's not going to be there with yichud, even if it was bala be'ir, or even if it wasn't libo gaspa. So Tosa says that obviously the Gemara, when it says ein chosheshim, also the lashon ein chosheshim mishum yichud is very strange according to Rashi. It's a shtickle lapella to say ein chosheshim means you just don't get malchus. Ein chosheshim very strongly implies that there's no isser, there's no problem. So that's the psak of Tosis, and that's the psak of Rov Rishonim as well, and also the psak of the Shulchan Aruch. That's the Shulchan Aruch in Chaf Pei Sif Ches. Just the Shulchan Aruch says which is also Lashon Rambam, Isha Shabaila Be'ir, Ein Choshen L'Yisyachid Ima, V'nei She'emas Baila Aleha. So he says the word Ein Choshen L'Yisyachid Ima, not Ein Choshen for Malchus, but we're not worried about, it takes away the Shuir Yichud, period. Like Tosas, like Rov Rishonim. So now that we established that's the psak was like Tosas. So now we have and we can clarify Kira. We have an elemental question over here in this din of Bala Be'ir. Is shot in Bala Be'ir that it's mutter because she's concerned that at any moment he might just pop into the room, he might burst into the room, and she'll be caught in the act? Or even if that's not really going to happen, but it's more like a psychological thing. It's not it's a direct, real concern that he's going to come walking in, but it's more of like a general psychological state that a woman will be in, that if she knows her husband is in town, that she's just very concerned to watch over herself, that just knowing his presence is there creates a certain psychological state, we'll call it an anxious kind of a state, just knowing that he's there. So this question really seems to be a machlokas Rashi and the Rambam at first glance, and maybe we'll remain with that. That Rashi, even though Rashi says the question is only for Malchus, but still Rashi says that Ein Choshen L'Mishum Yichud. Rashi explains that why demystifi mibal hashta asi. She's worried about her husband. He might walk in now. Hashta asi. Right now he might walk in. So you see, according to Rashi, Bala Be'ir helps because he might walk in. But the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch we just quoted, the words of the Rambam are that Isha Shabala Be'ir Ein Choshen L'Yisyachid Ima, V'nei She'emas Baila Aleha. The fear of her husband is upon her. Whenever you're in the city, he's in the same city, then she just in general has the fear of her husband upon her, and therefore she's in more like in a nervous kind of state that she's not going to go to do the wrong thing, and therefore it's a heter for yichud. Yes. Question.
Yeah, question. Would a nafkamina be between the psychological state and whether the husband is going to walk in? Would a nafkamina be how close the husband is to the house?
Oh, very good. That's the next point we're going to talk about. Very good. So, very good. So now what you just raised, this question, is a major machlokas achronim, which maybe may be a machlokas achronim, but it's a well-known psak, a very famous psak of the Chazon Ish, and also the Shebina Rav, the Dovim Mesharim, that they are mekel la'alacha as long as okay, we might even take a step back here a little bit, but let's see here a second. Okay, well, we'll come back to another point after this. But the Chazon Ish and the Shebina Rav held that as long as the husband is in town, it's irrelevant to how close he is or whatever, or he might or not. Like the Chazon Ish said that, in his words, he said that the Bala Be'ir it's not a practical state; it's a nervous state. It puts her in a sort of like a low grade nervous state, knowing her husband is there, as far as the concern that to do anything wrong, as long as you know that she's in town, he's in town. That's what the Chazon Ish held. Therefore, Chazon Ish said that even if the letters of the Chazon Ish, that he wrote that in different situations where one of the letters talking about an adopted son, and the other case was not adopted son; it was his natural son, but he got remarried, so it's not the son's natural mother. The question is there yichud for the son if he comes from ben izmanim, and etc. And he wasn't like libo gaspa because they got remarried when he was like 16, so he doesn't have that kind of like motherly relationship with her. But he comes home, and they get along okay. But the husband's out all over town, all over the city, and he doesn't come home until later in the day. And even though he might be in the far-flung reaches of Tel Aviv, still he held there was no problem of yichud, even though there's no way that he's going to walk in because he works far away. And they asked the Chazon Ish, what about if because he always goes all over Tel Aviv and then comes back at the end of the day. So if that's so, what if he goes to Petach Tikva or Ramat Gan? So that the Chazon Ish said no. There was the din of Baal Be'ir means Be'ir. You have to be in the same city, even though it might be a city nearby, but within this, it has to be considered within the same city. So the Chazon Ish held strongly that this heter is a heter, even though there is no real mirsas that he's going to actually walk in at that moment, because he said explicitly it's a general overall psychological state. It's not a practical thing that he's just going to pop in. The Chacham Sodom, he actually the Chacham Sodom writes that actually taking a step back in before we go any further in other nafkaminas, the general question of it'll come back to be a nafkamina also in our cases. So we have to know that in the Machlokas Rashi and Tosas, whether it's a heter in general or just a heter for Malchus, but there's really an Isser, the Chacham Sodom actually paskined to koshish for Rashi's Shita whenever it's Yichud Deraisa. Now, last week we discussed that according to the Chacham Sodom himself, Yichud Deraisa means one man and one woman. Then when you have two women, then it becomes a different Durabanan. Like Rashi says, Shem Yafata, but the Nochos Lispatos, it comes in the seduction, which is a question of Deraisa, of Durabanan. But in the case which is Deraisa, according to the Chacham Sodom, which is one and one, he held that one should be Choshish for Shitas Rashi. But the Chazon Ish and the Chabiner held not that way. They held that they're making like Tostos Lagamri. So that's going to color all these other questions as well. That they hold that there's a much bigger heter than the Chacham Sodom did. So now, Ramosha, the Yigas Moshe, Ramosha, and it's in or Eben Ezra Chelik Dalad Siman Samach O Zion. Ramosha quotes that Rashi that we mentioned. That Rashi says the lashon the Mishtafi Mibal Hashta Asi, and he says we see clearly from Rashi that the chash of the heter of a Baal of Ir has to be a chash that Taka might walk in any minute. And therefore, he goes and has a bunch of practical examples. He says that if you live, in Brooklyn and the husband's working in Manhattan, and it takes 2 hours to get there and 2 hours to get back, and she just spoke to her husband in the office, and she knows that he's there. So then, Baal here doesn't help because there's no chash he's going to walk in. Now, Ramosha doesn't mention the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch Lashon that say Amos Baal Aleh, which that is precisely where the Chazon Ish learned his din, that it's a psychological state. So I guess Ramosha must have learned, in order to say that his psak is not connected to Shulchan Aruch, Ramosha must have understood that Amos Baal Aleh is not a new din. It's not expressing, it's not being cholik in Rashi, it's not a new din, it's just another way of expressing the fact that she's worried he might walk in, and therefore Amos Baal Aleh. So it comes out that it's a major machlokas for Moshe and the Chazon Ish, in the pshat in those words of the Rambam. Even though the Chazon Ish is masking, Rashi said what he said, Rashi only said Gabi Malkus, and the Shulchan Aruch doesn't paskin that way, and so the Chazon Ish went that it's the Shulchan Aruch is paskening, it's a psychological state, not a practical thing to walk in. But Moshe held clearly not that way, as did other poskim. So I would just be mitzaref with the fact that Ramosha paskins l'chumra, that, and Ramosha ends off that he says people don't realize this, and it's something everybody needs to know. That the heter Baal of Ir is not just a blanket heter. There has to be some practicality in it that she's concerned that he might walk in. So we'll just be mitzaref to Ramosha, the chumra of the Chacham Sodom himself, that says we should pass like Rashi anyway when it's a question of deraisa. So when you're in a situation of yichud of just one man and one woman, and he's in a faraway place that it's not possible to come back. Coupled with the fact that we have a Rashi, we also have Ramosha, so it's a little bit difficult to be makel in such a case. I would, but just to know that the Chazon Ish and the Chibin Rav, the Dovim Mesharim, were makel legamri in this shaila. They were l'chatchila makel. They weren't considered with Ramosha's side at all. Now, another Nakuda over here, which really ties together with this as well, is that let's say there's another shaila in the Chachmas Adam. Yes, I don't hear you. Let's see. A second.
Just to clarify.
Yeah.
So with Moshe, when you referred that Rashi and Rambam aren't necessarily disagreeing, that's Rav Moshe's opinion, in
right.
that he's saying that one causes the other. That's
what he doesn't address this. This is what I'm answering. The fact that how could Rav Moshe leave out the Shulchan Aruch and not discuss that when the Chazon Ish learns that it's saying the opposite. So Rav Moshe must have learned the Shulchan Aruch and the Rashi are one shita. And the Amos Balal is not a new din, it's just another way of expressing the concern that he might walk in. It's not a psychological state, it's still also the practical state.
So it's a nuance. It's okay.
Yeah, that's what Moshe must have learned, in order not to make his psak being social to Shulchan Aruch. So that's what you have to say.
Thank you.
Okay, there's another shaila that's raised also by poskim. The Chachmas Adam again says that in the Binas Adam says that the hetero bala b'ir only helps if she's at home, if she's in her own house, because only there is there concern he might walk in. But if she goes to someone else's house, the husband doesn't know where she is, then there's no hetero bala b'ir. What does it help? There's no concern he's going to suddenly walk in where he doesn't even know where she is. That's this psak. However, again, the Chazon Ish and the Chibin Rav both say that Bala B'ir helps even in that case. So the question is, how would it help if there's no concern walking in? And the answer is because the Chazon Ish again holds, and it says in his letter, that the Shitaso, Chazon Ish holds that it's not a question of him walking in. It's a psychological state, knowing that she's in the city with the husband, that she just acts differently. She conducts herself in a more careful way, knowing that he's in town, because it just causes a certain nervous or psychological state to the woman that she's not going to be lax in any arayas. And therefore, Chazon Ish is makel in that state as well. Yes? Question?
What about in the situation where, like, let's say today, where you can have a GPS locator and know where your wife is? So,
if you put a chip in your wife, or if you track her phone, then maybe the Chacham Son would agree. Yeah.
Meaning, and you could technically find where she is and walk in with that, according to Chacham Son. Would that work out? Or
that would probably would help today. So if you put an electronic leash on your wife, then the Chacham Son would be makel also as well. Okay, there's another nafkamina in this is that the Chachmas Adam also is machmir if the husband gave reshus to the wife to go to let's say visit this person. If she says, "I need to go speak to so and so in their house," so no problem, you can go there. I'll see you later. So the Chachmas Adam holds that's a problem because once he gave her shush to be there, Chachmas Adam has a premise that, and this is an important premise, and I'm not sure if anybody really disagrees with this premise, but the Chachmas Adam says that the hetero bala b'ir, the concern he's going to walk in, is not necessarily that it's going to walk in during the act. They'll be caught in the midst of the act of having the promiscuous act. The concern is that because that act itself is very short, and the amount of time that she'll be there in total could be quite a bit of time leading up to the act and being there afterwards and everything. So the Chacham Adam presumes that the concern is that the husband will walk in and just find her there altogether. Like, what are you doing here with this guy in solitude? What are you doing here? And start pressuring her and ask her questions and get her to break down to finally admit what she did. So that's the concern, that he's just going to catch her there. Period. That's the overall concern, that you need to create that concern in order for there to be heter bala be'ir. So again, it's not just that he was going to walk in, even according to Rashi, that he might walk in any minute. Not to walk in any minute and catch her in the act necessarily, but catch her just there, period. That's what we're concerned about. So, therefore, based on that premise, Chachmas Adam assumes that if she has no concern that she'll be caught just being there, period, because she's there with permission. He said it's fine for her to be there. He gave her permission to be there. So then, since she's not worried about being there at all, she's not worried about being drilled. That once the husband catches her there, she's not worried about getting a whole drilling. What are you doing here? What are you doing with him? What's going on? And get her to break and admit something she did. So then it's no longer a concern of Bala Be'ir. Bala Be'ir doesn't affect her anymore because she's there with permission, and therefore the heter of Bala Be'ir would not apply. That is according to the Chachmas Adam. Again, the Chazon Ish, going with his reasoning, Chazon Ish writes in a letter that it's brought down in his name that even if you're there with permission, then it's still a heter bala be'ir. The biggest raya is his case of the second marriage, when you had the son coming home to visit. So enlecha heter gadol b'zeh. There's no greater rishus from the father for the son to be there when the father mamish wants to go there and feel at home. And even so, the Chazon Ish is matcha that case. So you see that the Chazon Ish held that even if you're there with permission, that does not take away the heter of bala be'ir. So why not? If you're not worried about being caught there, then why is there a heter of bala be'ir? So the answer is the Chazon Ish l'shitasa holds that it's nothing to do with being caught. It's just the general psychological state. So since he's there, even though the son is there with rishus, still his second wife is not. There's no chashash she's going to be muzana or do anything wrong because she has that psychological state, or like the Chazon Ish called it. He said bala be'ir is a nervin. It's like it affects the nerves. It's not a practical thing. It's a psychological state, and therefore he held that it's still a heter of bala be'ir. Okay, and now we have this. We have a Tanai. The Gemara says there's a Tanai and heter of bala be'ir, as we saw, that it's not libo gaspa. You don't feel too chummy with her. In that case, when it's libo gaspa, so that according to the Chachmas Adam, we understand libo gaspa. We understand what the issue is, because libo gaspa means that the husband won't be concerned about him being there because he knows that they're good friends, and you see the fact that they're still good friends all this time. The husband must be okay with that. He must be allowing that, and therefore she's not concerned of being caught in the room with him because he's like the husband knows that they're good friends. So that makes sense why there's no heter of bala be'ir anymore when it's libo gaspa, according to the Chazon Ish. According to the other side, I meant according to the Chachmas Adam. According to the Chazon Ish, that it's a psychological state. So then the question is, why is there a problem of libo gaspa? Even if there might be chummy, but if the husband's in town, then why does the fact of libo gaspa affect it? That's not so clear. It's not so understandable. It's not as easily understandable. It might just be that it breaks down that psychological state. That's a little bit more of a chiddush, but it's sort of perhaps it breaks it down. That needs a little more understanding. I'm leaving that as a question. An interesting point about this is bala be'ir. 2 points. One is that Rabbi Yasha points out that we only find a lashon. I think you have a finger on something that's clogging up the vision over here. for everybody. So somebody has a finger on the. There you go. Maybe that's better. I'll be done. Okay. All right. That Rabbi Yosha points out that we only find a lashon of Bala Be'ir. We don't find a lashon of Ishta Be'ir. There's no such halacha of Ishta Be'ir. So the wife's concerned, either psychological state or worried is going to walk in when the husband's in town. But we don't find the heter that the husband's concerned if the wife is in town. The only lashon we find in Chazal in the Gemaras over here is, like in the Mishnah, is Ishto Imo. The wife is with him. So there is a heter of Ishto Imo. When you say Ishto Imo, that she's with him, then Ishto Mashamrasa, then she guards him. But when it's just Ishto Be'ir, she's in town, that's not enough of a mirsas, of a pachad, or concerned, or a psychological state. Anyway, you learn the wife doesn't create that for the husband, only the husband creates it for the wife. There's a nafkamina in this as well. Rav Shlomo Zalman, in a letter in the beginning of the Sefer, the Dvar Halacha, so he says that he goes through a number of nafkaminas. We'll just mention one of them, and you can do the math with the rest of them. But one nafkamina he says is that if the wife made a mistake, she thinks her husband's in town. She thinks he's in town, but he's really not. He never told her he left town. So since he didn't tell her, she thinks he's there. So another man goes into the seclusion with her, and he knows that the husband is in town. So Rav Shlomo Zalman says that the toelis of Baal Be'ir, we don't find anywhere that affects the man. It affects the woman. She has a psychological state, or she's worried he's going to walk in. We don't find anywhere that the man has that pocket. Just the woman has it. So, therefore, if she thinks he's in town, and the man that walks in, he knows the husband left town, but he never told her that. So then, technically, it's not an Isra of Yichud right now, because she is still. It's not like some kind of a mysterious hocus pocus thing that the husband is there, that casts some kind of a thing. It's just her knowing that he's there, thinking he's there. That's what puts her into that psychological state. And therefore, if she thinks he's in town and he's not, there's still not an Isra Yichud. So it's an interesting nafkamina. Now the other halacha we see. Questions?
Does it work vice versa? If she does think he's in town, but he's not. I mean, vice versa. She doesn't think he's in town, but he is.
Then it won't help. It doesn't. If she thinks he's not in town.
If she thinks he's not in town, but he is.
Right. So then Rav Shlomo Zalman says that if a man goes into yichud with her, he needs to inform her that her husband's in town. Yeah. Otherwise, he's being overlifted iver to cause her to be in a matzah of yichud that she will at this point possibly be willing to mezana, not knowing their husband's in town. So he's mechuyev to inform her that her husband's in town. If he doesn't, he could be overlifted iver by going into that matzah of yichud with her. Also, vice versa, he says that if a man goes into a house thinking that it's yichud, and he doesn't realize that there's a pesach pasuach, like on the other side of the house or something like that. There's an open door, so he thinks he's in a massive yichud, and she knows that it's not. Then she needs to inform him that there's an open door somewhere, in order that he should not be machshel him with the Isra yichud, because he, by not knowing that and going into that situation, that he, from his perspective, is being over an Isra yichud, and it's similar to compares it to a case where somebody thinks that they're eating. The Gemara says that if a person thinks that they're eating chazer, but it's really deer meat, so then you kapora for that, for thinking that they're eating chazer. You wouldn't get malchus for it, but you need kapora for that. To think you're doing the wrong thing and go ahead and do it anyway, that also is an avera, a type of an avera. So she has to inform him that there is an open door in order that he should know that there's no Isra Yichud. He shouldn't need kapara for that. Now, the next halacha, which is the din of Pesach Pasuach, that says Pesach Pasuach was just a rabbim. So one point is that we have this is really a vast, there's an entire major chapter of this in the Dvar Halacha. We'll touch on a couple of points tonight, because we're getting late here. So first of all, the Binas Adam, when it says Pesach Rishus Rabbim, he says it needs to be Rishus Rabbim Mamish. A real Rishus Rabbim as opposed to just a Chatzar. It's just a courtyard. It has to be, that's not a real Rishus Rabbim. For obvious reasons, that only that makes the possibility of a lot of people to walk in. But it's brought down from in the Dvar Halacha in the name of the Shuir Yosef, and then he brings a major list of poskim after him that say that also chatzar does help. So it's a big nafkamina. Like if you live in one of these like apartment buildings that has just has a hallway and a bunch of apartments in it. So it's probably not a real Shus Rabbim. It's more like a chatzar because it's not open to the street. But it's more like a chatzar. It's like a modern day chatzar. And so according to the Chacham Hasadim, that should be a problem of Yichud there. If you have the door open, Pesach Pasuach would be a problem. But according to the both poskim paskin, that's still okay. Now, what does it mean, Pesach Pasuach? So this is a major shayla in Rishonim and Achronim that the opinion of many Rishonim and Achronim, and among them are the Chazon Ish and the Shibin Rav, is that to be Pasuach doesn't necessarily mean that it's actively open. It can be closed as long as it's not locked. As long as it's not actually locked, then it's called Pasuach. Pasuach means anybody could just open the door without having to break in or have a key. That's called Pasuach L'Shus Rabbim. According to Rabbi Akiva Eiger and many other poskim, it means literally has to actually be open. The Dvar Halacha says that if you're in a place that nobody would ever walk in on their own, so then even the first opinion of Chazon Ish, would not help. They would agree that the door has to be ajar. It's not enough that it's just unlocked. That wouldn't be sufficient. We try to be machmir with that when we can. Generally speaking, we try to be machmir to have the door a little bit ajar because it's not so common for people just to walk in. I know, like in my house, so every person has their place and everything has its mila. So we all have, at least a lot of us have like annoying kind of people that just randomly just walk in without knocking, they think, okay, it's the rabbi's house or whatever, the director's house. A lot of people feel very, very heimish there, just walk in without knocking or anything, come in unannounced. So even though they might be annoying, but they also take away the matzah of yichud because they make it that your door, even though it's closed, as long as it's not locked, then it's Pesach Pasuach L'Shus Rabbim, because those kind of people walk in. Now, in the question of another one of the implications of Pesach Pasuach L'Shus Rabbim is if you have a window that's open to the L'Shus Rabbim that people can see in through the street into your house. So there you have a fascinating machlokas between Rav Moshe and Rav Shlomo Zalman, that Rav Moshe holds that if the window is open and people can see in, if they can only see the room that you're sitting in, but it's possible to pick up and walk into some other rooms that you can't see through the window, there are other rooms in the house that are not visible through the window, then there's still a necessary yichud, because you might get up and walk to another room. What's stopping you from doing that? Rav Shlomo Zalman strongly disagrees, because he says that if that would be the case, then they would never have a heter Pesach Pasuach L'Shus Rabbim, because the heter is that it's unlocked. So if it's unlocked, what's stopping you from going and locking it? If you're worried that you're going to take yourself from a matzah of heter to a matzah of iser to go to a room that you can't be seen in, away from the window, then why is it mutter to sit with an unlocked door? You might lock the door as well. Who's stopping you from doing that? Otherwise, we're not concerned that a person will be oker themselves from the situation of heter and put themselves into a situation of iser. That's Rav Shlomo Zalman's psak. And there's another nafkamina in this, that there's another machlokes that if Shlomo Zalman holds that driving in a car is always considered Pesach Pesuach Shus Rabin, people can see through the window of the car, and it's tantamount to Pesach Pesuach Shus Rabin. Even it's late at night, even there, since policemen drive around, and if you stop a car, on the side of the road or something like that, so police will stop and see what's going on. So people are concerned about that, and therefore it still has a din Pesach Pesuach Shus Rabin. He goes as far as to say that Ikra din, even traveling from on the highway from city to city, it's a chutz l'ir. Even there, there's policemen driving by, other cars driving by. People wouldn't stop so simply, and even though there he's not so happy about it, there he suggests not to do it. But Ikra din, it's really mutter. For Moshe, however, says even during the day, if you're driving in a regular street, so who's to stop you from driving off the street to a private place? You're driving by and you see a nice private place. Who's to stop you from pulling off the road to the private place and doing an act over there? So therefore, Moshe has a problem with being in a car altogether, especially driving city to city and kol shekan at night. And he only b'shas chak, where Moshe says that if you're driving, he says like it's matzah in the bungalows. That a woman standing there needs a ride to get to another bungalow colony or to get back to town or something, and you're driving by, and if you don't stop for her, then you'll be considered like a mean person or something like that, and she'll be stuck without a ride. So there, Shas Tzchak, he has a combination of certain shitas in the Shulchan Aruch that he holds b'diavad, it can be yotzei, but Meikar Din, he holds that's really a problem. Where Shlomo Zalman again says that we're not if you're driving in a matzav heter on the main road, we're not concerned that you're going to pull off the road to a matzav not heter. Just like you're not concerned you're going to walk back to a back room if you're sitting next to the window. And Rosh Hashanah said to me when I discussed this with him, he said to me, "Yicholim leshevet li'ad hachalon ulefatpet shot rabot." He said they can sit next to the window and they can just, they can babble away for hours on end, and it's not a problem. We're not worried they're going to pick up and go anywhere else, because a person, we're not. The chash of yichud is not that you're going to take yourself and put yourself into a matzav iser. It's just if you are in a matzav iser, then you're over in iser yichud. We're never concerned that you're going to get up and put yourself into that situation. So that's their machlokas. Okay, I think we've said enough tonight. So to be continued. We'll put new marmakomos up and we'll go further to finish off further in the sugya this coming week and the next couple of weeks.
Rabbi, could I trouble you to send me the link of the shiur?
Okay, that's going to come probably through Israel.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Adios. Call 2. All the best. Take care.